You bought a good television. You bought real speakers. Maybe a receiver with more inputs than you will ever use. And you still find yourself reaching for subtitles during a normal conversation scene, then getting your head blown off 2 minutes later when a car explodes? That gap is not your hearing failing. That gap is not a bad movie mix. That gap is a box sitting behind your television that has never once been told the shape of your room, and it has been guessing this whole time. Here is the invert. The most expensive receiver on the market, sitting in a living room with a leather couch, a rug, and a bay window, sounds worse than a much cheaper receiver that has actually been calibrated to that same room. Wattage does not fix this. Channel count does not fix this. The manufacturer benefits from you never finding out, because a setting you do yourself for free does not sell an upgrade. The question you are going to carry through this whole video is not which receiver is the loudest. It is which one actually listens to your room before it plays anything in it. We are ranking 5 ways people handle receiver calibration, worst to best, and at the end, I will tell you exactly which receiver and which system I would put my own money on. Here are the stakes, plainly. A receiver is not a television. You do not replace it every few years when a brighter panel comes out. It is wired into your wall, bolted to your speaker terminals, and most owners keep one for 8 to 12 years. If you set it up wrong on day 1 and never touch it again, you are living with that mistake for a decade, not a weekend. Nobody sponsors this video, nobody paid to be ranked well, and the winner here is not the most expensive box on the shelf. It is the one that does the one job correctly, reading your room and adjusting itself to it. Number 5. The worst approach on this list is running a receiver with no calibration at all, straight out of the box on its factory flat setting. This is more common than you would think, because plenty of budget receivers include a microphone in the box that owners never plug in. Think of it like buying a suit off the rack and never getting it hemmed. It was built to a standard size, not to you. A receiver's factory tuning is built for an empty test chamber with no furniture, no rug, and no drywall bouncing sound back at you. Your living room is nothing like that. Bass builds up in corners. Dialogue reflects off a coffee table and arrives a split second late, and the sound your ears actually receive is nothing like what the engineers heard in their lab. Owners who skip this step consistently report the same 3 complaints. Dialogue that disappears under music and explosions. Bass that either booms in one spot on the couch or vanishes 2 feet to the left. And a general sense that the system just sounds harsh or muddy no matter how they adjust the volume. Buy it if you are testing a receiver before returning it and genuinely do not care yet. Skip it if you are keeping the thing because you are running a system that was never actually set up. One line to remember this by: an uncalibrated receiver is a translator who has never heard your language. Right there is where most people quietly give up on their system and blame the speakers instead of the settings. So if you have caught yourself turning the volume up and down instead of fixing the actual problem, hit like now, because this video exists to help the next person who is about to make the exact same expensive mistake you almost made. It costs you nothing. It tells this channel more people need the honest version of this explanation, and it means more than you think. Number 4 is running the automatic calibration once and trusting the raw result without checking it, which is what happens on most entry-level Odyssey receivers like the Denon AVRS770H. To be fair to this step, doing the automatic run is genuinely better than skipping it entirely, and Odyssey has been doing this longer than any competitor, so credit where it belongs. The problem is what happens after the microphone finishes its beeps. Odyssey's raw automatic curve is tuned conservatively, and multiple independent reviewers describe the untouched result as sounding either too bright or too dull depending on your specific speakers, because the algorithm is guessing at a target that fits every possible room instead of your one room. Picture a tailor who takes your measurements perfectly, then hands the suit to a different tailor down the street who has never seen you, and tells them to just guess at the fit. The measurement was accurate, the application was not. The fix here is a $20 companion app called Multi-Q Editor, which lets you see and manually adjust the correction curve Odyssey applied, instead of accepting it blind. Buy it if you already own a Denon or Marantz receiver, because this fix costs you almost nothing and takes 15 minutes. Skip spending real money chasing a different system if this is genuinely all you need. One line: automatic is not the same as automatically correct. Now we cross from the traps into the receivers actually worth calibrating. And the honest reason the next 3 are worth your money is that room correction quality More than watts per channel or channel count is the single biggest factor in whether your system disappears into the movie or constantly reminds you it exists. Number 3 is the Denon AV-RX 2800H, a 7.2 channel receiver running Odyssey Multi-Q XT32, the fuller version of Odyssey with 512 correction filters per channel instead of 256. In practical terms, that extra filter density is what actually fixes room modes, the specific bass resonances caused by sound bouncing between two parallel walls, and doubling up on certain notes while nearly canceling out others 2 feet away. Think of a room mode like a badly tuned guitar string. Pluck it, and one note rings far louder than the rest, no matter how well the guitar itself was built. XT32 goes note by note and tunes that string down to where it belongs. In a real living room, 12 feet by 15 feet, with a couch against the back wall and no acoustic treatment on the walls, this receiver, rated at 95 watts per channel with all channels driven, produces a genuinely substantial jump over no correction at all, and reviewers consistently name it the price-to-performance benchmark in its class. Where it shows its age 2 or 3 years in is the interface, which some owners describe as needing a real learning curve, and the fact that Dirac Live, the more precise competing system, is not included here at all. Buy it if you want the most thoroughly proven correction system on the market, and you are willing to spend 15 minutes in the companion app getting the curve right. Skip it if your room has serious bass problems, a corner-loaded subwoofer, or an oddly shaped space, because a sharper tool exists for exactly that job, and it is coming up next. One line. This is the reliable option that rewards you for reading the manual once. Number 2 is the Yamaha RX V6A, 7.2 channels at 100 watts per channel, running YPAO with RSC, which stands for Reflected Sound Control, and multi-point measurement, a feature that used to be locked behind a nearly $1,000 receiver and now sits on one that regularly street prices under $600. Multi-point measurement means the microphone takes readings from up to 8 seats around your room instead of just one. So the correction is not just tuned for whoever happens to sit dead center. Reflected Sound Control specifically targets the sound bouncing off a nearby wall or a piece of furniture next to a speaker. Sound that arrives at your ear a fraction of a second after the direct sound and blurs the clarity of dialogue the same way a shout across a canyon comes back doubled and mushy. Owners consistently describe the jump from an uncalibrated setup as a noticeable improvement in intelligibility, meaning dialogue steps forward instead of hiding, and bass tightens up once the process finishes. This is the system reviewers call the easiest to run correctly and the most naturally balanced out of the box, which matters enormously for someone who does not want to fight with an app afterward. The honest catch. Yamaha's own reviewers note it is more conservative below 80 Hz than Odyssey or Dirac, so in a room with serious bass buildup, it plays it a little safe rather than aggressively hunting down every last resonance, and some owners have had to manually reset speakers from small to large after a run left the subwoofer silent. Buy it if you want the calmest, most set-and-forget calibration experience, and your room is a fairly normal rectangular shape. Skip it if you are chasing reference-level bass accuracy in a genuinely difficult room. One line. This is the system that gets it right without ever making you feel like you needed a manual. Before the pick I actually would buy, subscribe now if this is the first time someone has walked you through what your receiver's calibration is actually doing, because every video on this channel exists to save you from buying twice. And stick around because the next pick is the one piece of gear on this entire list that includes a feature other brands charge you $350 extra for. Number 1. The one I would buy myself is the Onkyo TX-NR7100. 9.2 channels at 100 watts per channel, THX certified, with full bandwidth Dirac Live room correction included out of the box at no extra charge. On a Denon receiver, that same full version of Dirac Live is an approximately $350 paid license on top of the receiver price. Onkyo includes it standard. Dirac Live is widely described by independent reviewers as the current gold standard for precision, because unlike Odyssey and YPAO, which primarily correct frequency response, meaning how loud or quiet each note plays, Dirac also corrects the timing of the sound, called phase, meaning how late or early each frequency arrives at your ear. Think of two singers performing the same note. One is perfectly in tune, but starts a half second late. It still sounds wrong even though the pitch is right because the timing is off. Frequency-only correction fixes the pitch. Dirac fixes the pitch and the timing together, which is exactly the combination that untangles a boomy, corner-loaded subwoofer or a room with hard floors and no furniture to absorb reflections. In a 14-foot by 18-foot dedicated room with hardwood floors and parallel walls, reviewers measured noticeably tighter, more defined bass below 80 Hz compared to an uncorrected setup, a bigger jump than either competing system produced in the same space. The honest catch, and I promised I would give you one on every pick, including this one. Dirac Live does not include an automatic loudness curve that scales with your volume knob, the way Odyssey's dynamic EQ does. So if you are the type of household that rides the volume up and down all evening between whisper-quiet dialogue and a loud action scene, you may need to manually adjust rather than trusting the system to compensate. It is also worth saying plainly that this exact receiver has been on the market a few years now. So if brand new HDMI features matter to you more than correction quality, that is a fair trade-off to weigh. Buy it if precision correction and genuinely tight bass matter more to you than the newest possible feature set, because street prices on this unit have repeatedly dropped into the $750 range, meaning you are getting Dirac Live, a normally expensive add-on, for less than some competitors charge for the receiver alone. Skip it if you specifically need the newest HDMI revision across every single port and are unwilling to compromise there. One line. This is the receiver that solved a problem the other two on this list only partly fixed, and it did it for less money, not more. To collapse everything you just heard into something you can actually hold in your head, there are 2 categories here, not 5. The mistakes are running no calibration at all, and trusting an automatic Odyssey result you never open the app to check. The real picks are the Denon AV-RX 2800H for proven, well-supported Odyssey XT32 correction, the Yamaha RX V6A for the calmest and most natural-sounding setup experience with YPAO and reflected sound control, and the Onkyo TXN R7100 for the most precise correction available, timing and frequency together, included at no extra cost through Dirac Live. Here is your 30-second check that requires no technical knowledge at all before you buy or recalibrate anything. First, ask what the continuous power rating is with all channels driven at once, not the peak number printed largest on the box, because peak power is measured under conditions you will never actually use. Second, ask whether the room correction system is Odyssey, YPAO, or Dirac Live, and whether it is the full version or a stripped-down entry tier, because the entry tier of any of these 3 leaves real performance on the table. Third, ask whether the receiver has EARC, which lets your television send full-quality surround sound back to the receiver from its own built-in apps, because plain ARC without the E in front of it cannot carry the same quality audio and will quietly limit you the moment you stream directly from the television instead of a separate box. Fourth, and this is the one people never ask themselves, what is the actual size and shape of your room? A tiny apartment living room with a couch against a shared wall does not need the same correction depth as a 14 by 18 dedicated theater room, and buying past your room's actual needs just spends money solving a problem you do not have. 2 tips, completely free, that most owners never touch. First, run the calibration again after you have furnished the room the way you actually live in it, meaning the rug is down, the curtains are up, and the couch is in its final spot. Not during the same week you moved in with boxes still stacked against the wall, because every soft surface and hard surface you add after that first run changes how sound bounces around the space. Second, once calibration finishes, go into the settings and turn off any so-called virtual surround or fake wide stereo mode that got enabled by default, because those modes are designed to impress you in a showroom with speakers everywhere, not to preserve the actual mix the sound engineer built for your living room. And turning them off is usually the single fastest way to make dialogue sound like it is coming from an actual person instead of a hallway. The most expensive receiver in the store still sounds like a stranger's living room until you sit it down and teach it yours. And the free 15 minutes it takes to do that will outperform every upgrade you could buy instead. If dialogue is the thing that keeps sending you reaching for the remote, the next video on this channel breaks down exactly which dialogue enhancement setting to use, and which one is quietly making it worse receiver by receiver, so you never have to guess again. If your room does not match anything I described here, tell me the room size in feet, which receiver you are actually considering, and I will give you an honest answer in the comments. No sales pitch attached. I read every single one. And if this saved you from buying the wrong box or from returning a good one because nobody ever told you to run the calibration, subscribe, because the whole point of this channel is that you never get talked into anything you do not need. Drop your room size in feet below, and I will see you in the next one.